License to Kill is sponsored by Sterifab and Pest Patrol. Sterifab delivers clean kills with a single spray, disinfect and eliminate pests instantly. And a special thanks to Pest Patrol, supporting our mission to make LTK agents the best in the field.
Hi, I'm Marcus, and welcome to the License to Kill podcast, where pest control professionals meet cutting-edge expertise, industry insights, and a whole lot of camaraderie. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting your journey as a PMP, this podcast dives into everything that makes our industry tick. From advanced techniques and groundbreaking products to hilarious field stories and the real talk about the challenges we face in our industry. Join us as we explore the science, art, and community behind pest control, celebrating the people who work tirelessly to keep our world safe, healthy, and pest-free. As always, stay sharp, stay connected, stay legendary. Let's start the show. Alrighty, folks. Well, thank you so much for joining us here for the License to Kill show. We're having a special edition today. We're doing a little bit of pop culture, talking about exterminators in media and what that does to the audience and what expectations that may have, and maybe some of the cool lore and decisions that we see along the way. And how those are portrayed. We've brought Alexander Smith with us. He's an ACE certified entomologist, and he's going to be talking to us a little bit about some observations that he's had, as well as pal around about some good jokes and some of the absurdities that we see in the media space when it comes to exterminators. Alex, go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do, and what are some of the things that have piqued your interest? What are some of the things you've seen in pest control in media?
I go by AJ in most places where I'm not being professional, mostly because my name is Alexander and everybody's just like, we're going to call you Alex. But fun fact about me, I absolutely hate being the second or third of name in any room. So Alex is a pretty common name. So I'll just go with AJ. Like probably 9 times out of 10, there's another Alex. Also, my last name is Smith. So there's at least 3 of them within 100 miles of where I live.
Double generic names. You got the Ricky Bobby
exactly.
Going.
So, but I'm one of the new hire trainers for Rent to Kill Terminex, and the associate certified entomology thing. I'm not sure if that had anything to do with me getting the job, because I talk very little about insects or rodents in my day-to-day. Mostly it's just, I'm gonna cuss, so prepare yourselves. Making sure people know shit from apple butter, like, because it's a rough world out there, and Billy the Exterminator is one of the reasons it's a rough world out there for us.
Oh, yes. Okay, so touch on that a little bit, right? I think one of the more famous examples from A&E, this is an actual real-world, quote-unquote, portrayal of exterminators. What have you seen?
I'm not a fashionista. I'm in here with messy hair and, the unshaven dad face and a t-shirt. But that man walks around with a giant belt buckle, which maybe that's normal in other places. Jeans, which aren't very professional in my opinion. And what is the nice word for the sleeveless tank tops that he wears? The beater. And cowboy boots, which again, styling. But anybody listening to this right now wondering what professional attire is for a pest management professional, that ain't it.
Definitely not the Carnival Barker attire. I'm not sure where the Mad Max dystopian, poker Mad Hatter thing that he's got going on is coming from. I know that that's something they try and do to jazz up the show. I find that show really interesting because they're always trying to dramatize things that really don't need it, and that's television, right? It's dramatizing things that don't need to be dramatized. But I think I remember one time seeing them trying to wrestle like a
crocodile out of a pool in Florida. So he just like jumps in the water with it. He's like, "This is how I'm gonna," and he's like flailing around for like 15 minutes. It's like, in no way is any real exterminator worth their salt gonna jump into a pool of water with a crocodile. Like, there are snares, there are traps, there's so many other things, ropes. There's so many things that you could do other than I need to get in here with this thing and tussle around with it. It's like that is the worst environment you could be in. It's not what you want to be doing at all.
It almost might be enticing for a crocodile. Like, if I hang out here, like somebody might just jump in for me to eat. Like, why would I leave? So
it was probably noticed in some of the activity of comers going and entering the pool. It's like, oh, free snacks right here. This is, and then they called one. They actually literally called someone to come show up and jump in the pool. So, I have this kind of running joke that I like to share often about pest control in the media and how the archetypal, the main trope of the knight in shining armor who goes out and slays the dragon and protects the townsfolk from this beast that's been pestering them, that's been harassing the townsfolk and eating their cattle and destroying their property and all of these things, and how in a very real way, that is pest control, right? That was pest control way back when. And even if the dragons part of it was not true, we certainly know the knights in shining armors were, and we also know that the pestilence and things that have always encroached in on society has always been true. But I think that the story of them showing up and slaying the dragon with the two-handed sword, that was their B&G for the year. And but I think that's such a funny trope, because it kind of tells us where we're at in our stature in society, right? Because in these stories, the knight in shining armor is not only the hero, but they're held at such a high regard, and just below royalty, the king and queen. They're knighting these knights, right? And I like to kind of joke around that we were just so good at doing pest control back in the day that we've killed all the big dragons, we killed all the big predators and giant cats and anything that could bother us, that now we're just left with the bugs and the rats, right? And so that's why pest control guys have kind of fallen in stature from right there near royalty to just kind of everyday job labor, blue collar work, right? The problem is we're just too good at our job, and if we could just hone in on just letting the villages get attacked a little bit more, maybe we could come back. No, I'm just that's totally.
well, let's think of like another famous exterminator, because you talking about that just made me think of it. St. Patrick. He got rid of all the snakes in Ireland. Like, that's one heck of an exterminator.
Dude, he became canonized for that, right?
Yeah. So, and the reason I actually thought of him is because I once had a customer who misunderstood me. I was like, yeah, I got rid of all the rats. And I meant in your building. And she pulled me into her office one day and she was like, you know what I saw this morning? And I was like, no, I didn't see anything when I inspected. Like, you're good. And she's like, I saw a rat on the MBTA. I'm like, what did you think I said? And she was like, you said you got rid of all the rats. I'm like, listen, if I got rid of all the rats in Boston, like, I'd be a saint. Like, there'd be a parade. Like, what do you think happened?
Yeah, well, so, what did New York recently hire? The rat czar, right? So you would be the rat czar of Boston or Chicago or wherever. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. So
don't get me started on that rat czar thing.
No. Tell me a little bit about the rat czar thing. No, I want to know. What's your thoughts on that?
I applied for that job.
I heard that the person who got it was not really much of a pest control person, kind of more of like a bureaucrat. What was the
yeah, that they were an elementary school official. Nothing against the people who educate the children of New York, and don't get me wrong, like, they use trash barrels in New York City now. Did you know that? Did you know they weren't doing that before?
I did see the big announcement. They rolled out and made a big press conference out of it. And they were like, guys, trash cans. And we were like, whoa, you're reinventing the wheel over here. Holy cow, you know. The rest of the nation was like, what? You're not, we're all using trash cans. You're the number one city in the world? What?
And so, like, it was always like pest control lore to me, New York City, because like we all grew up hearing, well, they got rats as big as dogs, and it's like, okay, they should do something about that. And then, like, when you come into this industry, we should all know who Bobby Corrigan is. Pretty please, like, look him up. I used to hear about, yeah, they fly him from Chicago to deal with the New York rat problem.
Holy cow. Could you imagine having to fly someone else out to freaking handle your rodent issues? I mean, just think about the premise behind that, having to fly out a technician or fly out an expert. Because in the largest city where there's a ton of experts, they couldn't find one person qualified. I don't know if they did enough looking. That's what it sounds like. Although Bobby Corrigan's probably, he's earned his title, so he's a great guy. But you know what I mean? Just think about the premise of outsourcing a technician from a whole other area. That's craziness.
Depending on where you internet search the word rodentologist, he's the only name that pops up. I mean, right. AI is doing favors for the industry, don't get me wrong on that, but because of AI, now it just tells you what a rodentologist is before you find a picture of him. Bobby Corrigan, I love you. You're my hero. If you end up hearing this, that's awesome. But that picture that everybody sees of you on one knee with the flashlight looking really confused, not the most flattering picture.
Well, Sylvia Kinmuir actually was talking a little bit about rodentologists and how there's basically none, right? That everybody ends up getting slotted into the entomologist role, and they just weren't even in Sylvia, they weren't even aware that a rodentologist was a title that they could go after, right, or a program that they could actually. But like you said, it's because it's so niche, it's so rare. There's no programs out there.
There's not a lot of money in that, like, and I'm not trying to make this a capitalist thing, but when you think about it, like, if you become an entomologist, like, obviously, yeah, you can go be an exterminator, that's great, but like there's also like medical entomology and conservation and the fact that they're the most abundant creature on the planet. Like, you can find some government funding somewhere or grant or whatever,
right?
Whereas most rodents are just associated with making us miserable.
Yeah, and that's kind of interesting because of the massive plagues that we experienced throughout history that were where rodents, even if they weren't the direct vector, they were a vehicle for the vector, the fleas and stuff like that. So it's kind of silly in that regard. That it's like they're definitely one of the main things that are doing property damage, destruction, just ruining sanitation, cross contamination, the spread of disease. And so, yeah, it is a little interesting. Yeah, when you get to the top of the industry, you realize there's actually not a whole lot of rodent specialists or rodentologists. For it being, like you were saying, with there being so many pests out there that would garner for government resources. The ag world, of course, that makes sense why so many of the bugs that are notable in the ag world. But you would think that that there would be, especially with like well-known endemics being in Chicago and New York City and stuff, that would have been addressed a long time ago. That like rodents would actually be one of the key cornerstones of research funding, vector control and all of that, right? I mean, you would think, but like you said, I guess in reality, they've just never found a way to make a good amount of money off it, or maybe it just hasn't ever panned out.
Which is a shame, because rodents were always my favorite part of pest control, and I want to take things back to like media and pop culture. Like, you talked about the dragon slayers, and yeah, those are dope exterminators, but let's talk about the bad guy exterminator. The Pied Piper.
Oh, yes, yes, the Pied Piper, right? Bringing infestations to you.
Yeah, well, he took them out, and then he took all their kids. Like,
Yep.
I have two stepchildren and one of my own. I don't know what you would do if you took a bunch of people's kids. It sounds like a nightmare. You'll never get any sleep. But he took them, and all the rats as well.
So, talking about a little bit more of pest control exterminators in media, we're a video game community, right? So, what are some of your favorite pest control or exterminators in the video game space? Can you think of any?
All right off the bat, Geralt of Rivia.
Yes, the Witcher, right? He carries
Like,
around a special sword for killing pests.
but it's not just that, because like if you think about it, like yeah, you can beat the game just by cutting everything up with a sword. Like maybe even at higher difficulties, but like that's not the way the game is meant to be played. You're supposed to do your research. You're supposed to hunt them down. You're supposed to figure out like what exactly their weaknesses are, and
Right.
that's our job. Like that's what we are supposed to be doing, because the equivalent of hacking everything up with a sword in any of the Witcher games is being a godforsaken baseboard jockey.
Ooh, that was a good little analogy right there. Yep, yep. There is definitely a lot of potions, if you will, a lot of additional products and stuff you could use in that. And they have that little index in the game that allows you to, like you were saying, kind of learn and study about the different monsters and creatures and things that are pestering the people. And and in that way, you kind of have to pull out your investigator hat, right? And that is exactly what we do, right? So maybe it's a little bit dramatized in that sense of we're not dipping and dodging and rolling around in fields and fighting griffins and all that stuff, but in a very real way, like you said, the codex, right? In going through and having a deep understanding of the nature in which you're fighting back against. That's the key. Right, it's more than just spraying. It's more than just walking around swinging your sword, right? You really want to make sure that you're learning what it is that you're going after, so that way you know how to go after it.
Absolutely. I know we started with video games, and I'm unfortunately very short on like video game characters that I consider exterminators, unless like we go really deep into like Master Chief from Halo, I guess, because he killed some bug-like things. But
Aliens.
I I was never good enough at shooters to be like that's my thing that I'm gonna climb onto. So if there are specific weaknesses that those things have, I am unaware.
Well, I think when people think of exterminators in media, either it's like we were talking about Billy the Exterminator, these kind of caricatures of just how silly one person can be. But then I think part of the reason why we seek that out is because of characters like Dale Ripple, right, and King of the Hill, is the perfect caricature of a real everyday exterminator, a bit of a conspiracy theorist, probably slightly right leaning in a lot of ways. Definitely, wearing that baseball cap, 24/7, every single day of the week, right? The pocket sand, I mean, that's just that is something a pest control guy would definitely do.
Can we touch upon the conspiracy theories thing for just a second? Because I, the company I worked for up in Boston, like anytime I would inherit an account from, another person who like either outgrew it or just left, like I would hang out with the site contact as I was trying to figure out what I needed to do. And they'd be like, "Did you know the last guy thought there was lasers on the moon?" And I was like, okay, how does that come up in conversation? I mean, obviously I'm going to bring it up now because that's wild, but like, what is it with, do you think there is a certain like connection or correlation between this industry and conspiracies? Or is it just we all want to be Dale Gribble?
I actually do think that people who are in the industry tend to tend to be bent towards having a conspiratorial mind. I don't know if that's just our nature of, the way we're always trying to look at things, and peeling back that veil, if you will, right behind a situation. Because that's kind of how it feels like when we deal with pest control, we're dealing with customers, and they're always like, well, the bugs are coming from right here, or the issues this thing right here. And you're like, that's what you're seeing on the surface. When you peel back the curtain, actually, your problem's stemming from this situation way over here, this conducive condition that just happens to be nearby, or actually, this is this other thing that's promoting it and has nothing to do with any of the reasons that you've believed in, And so I think we kind of get used to, seeing beyond what's just there at the edge of our nose, right? And a good technician will do that, but then I think that means we start to do that with like headlines. We start to do that with, and there's something about the industry where a lot of people are purposely misinformed, right? And they're not told about the nuances of our industry because it's just not supposed to be for them, if you will. First place I'm thinking of the grand conspiracy in pest control that exists, right, is aerial applications, right? Chemtrails. Everybody
Yeah.
just is like, there's this huge debate online. It's like, no, they're just contrails. Everything's just condensation. There's no such thing as chemtrails. They don't exist whatsoever. And then on the other side of it, it's like chemtrails are real, and there's some grand government conspiracy to kill and poison all the people, and it's population control and all this other stuff, right? And there's no meeting of the mid ground that it's like, well, actually, contrails do exist, and we see those often. You can see when it happens. But don't be so confident as to say that chemtrails don't exist at all. They do, but no, it's not a grand, government conspiracy to fight against the population. It's vector control programs for mosquito health outbreaks, after hurricanes and, large rainstorms, or if there's been any reports of like, mosquito borne illness in the area, like chikungunya or Zika or something like that. There's some weather modification programs that exist for like large sporting events, crowds, or even around airways, like airports and stuff like that. And it's not, again, it's not some crazy conspiracy. It's like it's literally just normal operations. It's keeping things safe. It's keeping the public safe. And to think, this technology stems from crop dusters, right? Planes that flew over,
Yeah.
applying product, right? It's not like nozzles on a plane is not a revolutionary idea, but there's just for some reason when you get, instead of 5 feet over crops, but 50,000 feet in the air, it's like people think the technology doesn't exist. And if it does, it's got some great, and it's like, I think that's where we as pest control people, we kind of start to see beyond that sometimes. We go, well, maybe there is a reason to have a bit of a conspiracy, like, if you just believe the blank statement, it's like they don't exist, it's never happened, nobody's spraying anything anywhere ever. It's like, well, then I got a bridge in Queens I'd like to sell you. It's like if that's what you really think, it's never happening. Then, you just you don't know.
And so the thing you brought up about the conspiratorial mind and like the fact that we are trained to look behind things and to figure out the true source, like that actually, I am not trying to rain on anybody's parade. Um, I do not think Q from QAnon was a believable or credible entity. Y'all can believe what you want. But when people were studying Q or for the QAnon movement, they were actually talking about how a lot of it like does follow along with like creating a game, like in the
Yes.
patterns in games. Because like y'all ever play a video game and you're just like, how was I ever supposed to figure that out? That's a bad game. Like
Right.
if there's no way to figure it out, like there's no pattern to recognize,
Right.
that's not good game design. So that that actually does track because there are certain things that just from habit of doing this all day, every day, it's like, yeah, I saw that pattern like 5 minutes ago in the game. Like that's why I'm, you know, 5 stages ahead of you.
Right. 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 And then to kind of also just contribute to the conspiratorial thing, the internet has not always been around, right, in the way that we understand. And so this ubiquitous access to information has not always been there, and people's ability to share their stories has not always been as available, right? But pest control people have always had incredible access to facilities, right? Site restrictive, sensitive facilities. It's very commonplace for your pest control technician to have a badge that accesses more rooms than majority of the managers on the facility, right? Because there's not a room, bugs can come from anywhere, and or they can pop up, pest problem can pop up anywhere. And so what I think that has kind of led to over time, especially back in like the 70s and 80s and stuff, is that people did see things, right? People who were servicing government facilities or, these advanced research, places, Lockheed Martin, or somebody has to do pest control at NASA, right? Somebody does pest control at the White House. Somebody does pest control at, Lockheed Martin or whatever. Like these people, probably did see some things, or maybe talk to an admin or talk to an administrator, and they go out and they try and tell their friends, like, man, you wouldn't believe it, but I service this place. They're building this plane that has like anti-gravity technology or something. They make this wild claim, and then like in the 80s or 90s, people are just like, the fuck are you talking about? Like, you just sound like some kooky, wearing your tinfoil hat. And how do you express to them? You're like, no, but like I've literally seen it with my eyes. I've literally been in the room. I've done the things. I've talked to the scientists who are working on it. But you can't say that. So a lot of these places either have non-disclosures or whatever it may be, right? And so I think that's kind of a part of it too. Is that some of this stuff has always been around, and there's conspiracy theory itself was a coined term by the CIA, right? Like, there's always been conspiracies by people who are in power who are just they're conspiring. They're conspiring all kinds of shit, whether it's business stuff, whether it's technology stuff, whether it's, defense stuff, right? There's always been people conspiring together. And so the theory part of it, right, is kind of where things get a little abstract. But, I think even in like media, we have seen video games like Grand Theft Auto, right? There's a whole scene where they dress up as pest control guys to go in and rob the bank, right? And part of the reason why they do that, huh?
Nobody stops us. I'm
Nobody
here to
stops.
I'm here to do pest control. Your job is gross. You do whatever you need to do.
Have you heard of the ladder trick? Right, the ladder thing. These guys got viral on the internet because they kind of figured out if you wear like a safety vest and just carry a ladder, like you and another person, you can walk into anything. Like you can walk straight into an amusement park, like SeaWorld, the movie theater. Like it literally doesn't matter. You can walk into a concert, a security. If you got a ladder and you got two work vests, people just don't question it, And so I think there's an element that's there. There's that as well. I think that conspiracies have always been behind closed doors, but they're trying to leak out. Somebody's always been trying to say something, or even if it was just a bragging comment in passing. Oh, hey man, you wouldn't believe what I got to do. I think that's where the kind of trope that all these pest control guys are running around with all these conspiracies, and that they pretend to have this inside knowledge. And I think it's because it's not as pretend as the general public might want us to perceive it as. Is these guys have probably really stood in places and talked to people who've seen things that wasn't available to the general public. And that's not, that doesn't have to be anything crazy. Corporate espionage, is a big thing, right? People don't just allow anybody to walk in, but we do.
I actually, you saying all of that made me realize I have my own conspiracy theory, and it's not something that I talk about much because it's just nobody cares. But you remember who Enron was, the company Enron?
Of course.
You know who Mitt Romney is?
Yes.
Okay, so maybe this is all just public knowledge and you can Google it, but I am 100% convinced that Mitt Romney inherited all of the Enron like financial files and stuff. because I did pest control for 200 Clarendon Street in Boston, which the stock company or the investing company he owned or co-owned was in that building, Bain Capital. And when I went up to the 59th floor where they had a giant, and I mean giant, Enron logo all lit up, just hidden in a back corner room. And I was just like, I had no idea who it was when I first saw it because I was an ignorant kid when all of that went down. And again, the same security guy who told me about my former colleague thinking lasers were on the moon was like, oh yeah, that's Enron, Bernie Madoff and such. And I'm like, what?
Yep.
So yeah, that's my conspiracy theories. And also Enron just came back.
Yeah. I saw. I think
So
it's a joke.
it's
I
all
don't know
Mitt
if
Romney.
it's a Mitt Romney's bringing Enron back. No, and then another thing too, I think that changes things is like a lot of people, these entities that conspiracies get made up about, right? Whether they're defense contractors or whatever, we kind of put them in this box of like, there's this entity that's just over there. They're over there doing things hidden behind the door. But when you service the locations, like you just pointed out, it's like you realize that a lot of these people are in the same building, or maybe like on the same block or across the street from each other. This major business is right across the street from the FBI, which is right across the street from, these are not disconnected entities in the way that we tend to think of them when we see it on news headlines, that they're just, they're sparsed all over the country and it's these little pockets of people. That's not really how it works. And I really do think that that's why, and I don't want to go off on a political tangent, but the whole thing about like draining the swamp and inside the Beltway loop, inside of, Washington, D.C. and stuff, that's what people are really talking about. It's the proximity factor, right? It's that these people are not just scattered all over the place, independently working on their own conspiracies, if you will. They are all working very close to one another. They probably go to the same restaurants. They pass each other in the hallways. These are not unfamiliar characters with each other, and their businesses are in proximity, and everything else goes in that same way. And so I think when you're the guy that goes from office to office to office, right, and you literally walk out of the FBI office on the 4th floor, and then you go down to 2 floors to the holding company that happens to be, working on some big case for the FBI, it's like, how do you think they got connected? It's like they're there, like it's, I think that tends to be the case more than anything.
Absolutely, because like if you think about businesses, like we are one of the few industries or businesses that we go to all of the places. Like a restaurant supplier is only going to all the restaurants.
Right.
We are going to all of the restaurants. We are going to all the apartment complexes, all of the office buildings. Like,
right.
And if you do a good job, here's my pitch, guys, make sales, make yourself some money. If you're doing a good enough job, the people next door want you to do their stuff too. So,
hey,
and if it
Cloverleaf
just
a little
happens
bit,
to be the FBI and the pizza place, then you might find some weird connections between the FBI and the pizza place.
Oh, imagine the pest control guy who does Comet Pizza. Yee. You know what I mean? Like, how could a conspiracy not?
Right.
How could someone service that place regularly and then not maybe go out and have a conversation with their friend and be like, man, you wouldn't believe there's this place I service that's got some wild art, hanging out in the bathrooms and stuff. Like, how do you not take a picture of that and laugh about it later with your friends, and then your friends, tell a neighbor down the street, and they're like, man, my buddy last week was telling me that there's this, you know what I mean? And then that's how it happens. It's like, this game of telephone, 3 people down the line, and, and now you've gone from being the firsthand source who saw it with your eyes and sees it on a regular basis, right? You service it monthly, to the story of, well, he said that, she said that, she said that, he said that there's this guy who saw it, and that's how we suddenly end up in this, bin of, pest control people are always the conspiratorial minded person. It's like, maybe, but also maybe we just have firsthand access knowledge that a lot of people don't give us credit for.
No, 100%. Like, I hope this Mitt Romney conspiracy goes somewhere and I can end up with a Wikipedia article about me because of it. But let's talk about another conspiracy. Do you believe in vampires?
I do not believe in vampires per se, but I have to reckon with the fact they've been around in pop culture for so long, right? Elizabeth Bathory and what was the guy who originally was supposed to be Count Dracula or Dracula,
Oh, yeah,
Vlad
Vlad the
Vlad the
Impaler.
Impaler, right? Exactly. There's always been cultures and societies that have done like bloodletting, and cultures who believed in staying youthful forever by consuming or bathing in people's blood and stuff. And so I think there's definitely something. I mean, there's people who are practicing it. That's for darn sure. Now, whether or not there's some supernatural entity that's like flying around and turning into a bat and breaking into your homes and like I don't know about that part, but I definitely know that there's probably been some people who have seen some freaky shit when it comes to blood and it comes to some people's infatuation with it.
Vampires are the reason I became an exterminator.
Nah,
No
dude,
BS.
are you pulling out the wooden stake? You staying on the range? You
No,
said
so
this is my B and
I
T
may
right
have.
here.
There might be some hyperbole here, but Guillermo del Toro came out, and for those who speak Spanish, if I butchered his name, I apologize. Came out with a TV show and a comic book series called The Strain, and one of the heroes on this TV show was an exterminator, played by Kevin Durant.
Oh wow, that's
So,
funny.
and he was this guy from the Ukraine, which is topical nowadays, but it wasn't back then. And he used his extermination skills to realize there is a vampire problem in post 9/11 New York City, and he killed a bunch of vampires using the UV lights that do any of us actually use? Like, I know you can read about us using them, but do we ever actually use the black light to find stuff? I never have.
I had a little black light flashlight I deployed one time at a food handling facility. Came in helpful, but it is more rare and far and few between. Okay, so then let me ask you this: what if you had to be an exterminator responding to a pest infestation of vampires at one of your local facilities? How would you handle it? What would be your IPM plan for dealing with? Is that where the garlic and stuff comes from? It's like some exterminators like we gotta find a way to do an application around here, repellent.
Okay, so let's talk about the herbal remedies first, just in general pest control, because that's kind of like a media and pop culture thing. I
Right.
heard mice don't like mint. Yeah, and I heard garbage truck drivers
And
don't like the smell of trash.
I was gonna say it's cinnamon as well. Yeah, I heard if you walk around with mint and cinnamon, you'll never have any problems of ever.
So, like, maybe that's where the garlic came in because, like, they're always pulling up these herbs or these spices, and don't get. I season my food. I see a purpose for them, and if you put mint in my face, my eyes might water too. But mice will do what they got to do. Rats will definitely do what they got to do.
Right, right.
So, and honestly, my IPM plan for vampires would be, well, I guess your building doesn't have mini blinds anymore.
We need as much sunlight in this area as possible. Honestly, that is the kind of thing, right? When you think about movies and how they put together, how they're going to tackle it is basically a pest control plan, right? You put out your repellent, you set up a couple of traps, right? You maybe have a direct contact, the wooden stake or whatever. You may have like some kind of lethal. Well, we have lethal stuff, snares and stuff as well. So it does kind of feel like maybe they are a pest. Maybe vampires are more pesty than we realize.
I love old movies, and I will be the first one to tell you if it bleeds, I can kill it. Like, just give me the right thing labeled for it. Like, if it's the Predator from the Predator movies, don't give me a 22. That's not labeled for Predator. Give me like, I don't know, what size round are we feeling for a Predator?
Dude, 30-06, man. Yeah, just
Oh,
freaking put them
that's a good one.
down.
Okay. Yeah. The
That's
only
what I
thing you'll
do.
feel is recoil.
That's what I do with a hog, right? I mean, hog, vampire, werewolf. It's all kind of in the same category.
No,
I
I'm picking up what you're putting down. Absolutely.
To kind of sprinkle the last little bit of conspiracy talk, if you will, when COVID happened, there was a lot of adverse effects to the vaccines, right? And so, I was ChatGPT and stuff was coming out around the time, and I made a goofy little fictional short story because I was I was just kind of enamored by what I was seeing. Because again, seeing things through the lens of a pest control person, the two reported main symptoms of the vaccine was tachycardia in men, right? So just adult side, right? Like adult healthy athletes just dropping out dead, right? And then the other one was fertility disruption and menstruation disruption in women, which is like an IGR, right? It's like, and in the last few years, specifically, there's been such a rise of dual action products, right? That I kind of was like, wow, this is crazy because it like if I was, if which I, if I was a pest control person and I was looking at, a city the way that I look at an ant mound, right? Like, and a dual action product were applied, these would be the results that I would expect to see, right? I mean, this is what you would expect to see happening. Adults just dropping out, and and fertility issues coming about, and so total hearsay, total just conspiracy. It has no merit whatsoever. It was just a short little fictional story, but I couldn't help but put the connection together and think, how wild it would be, conspiracy if. What if several of those vaccines or the batches of vaccines were placebos, right, or were control samples, right, and not everybody got an actual dose of the vaccine, right? And if that was the case, then who's to say that some of those control samples or some of these other batches didn't have a dual action product? There are on statement public records of people like Bill Gates who's talked about using vaccines for population control for like 2 decades. That guy went around talking about that stuff, especially like in Africa and stuff like that. So then you kind of start to scratch your head and go, if there was any merit to them using vaccines in population control, what would those effects look like in real time? How would I see those symptoms manifest? And what are the two things you end up seeing happen, right? It's like, now did everybody get did all 7 gajillion doses contain the dual action product? Obviously not, right? It's a very real virus. A lot of people actually needed help. The very valid medical vaccine. It's, let's not get too carried away with it. But at the same time, like Tuskegee trials, right? Experience stuff. It's not like the medical industry's above doing these things either. Like
It's not, and I'm again like you. I'm not trying to get on the political side, so I'm just going to state a fact. This is not a speculation. This is a fact. The person who founded Planned Parenthood did so because they did not want people who didn't make money to have children.
yeah,
They
they're
were a
eugenicists.
eugenicist.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So that's been something that people have done for at least since WW dose. So it's not completely foreign, and I'm gonna get canceled for what I'm about to say, but like an exterminator would be really good at planning a genocide. Like that's what we have to do day in and day out. Like, well, we got to figure out where they bang. We got to figure out where they eat. We got to figure out where they drink, and we have to stop them from doing all of those things.
All right. Well, since we've gone down this rabbit hole, we might as well tick it up the next notch, right? So, if you were doing an eradication program, right, for a major pest population, would you not include something like Liquitox for water sources that you can contaminate? What about rodenticides and poisons, food sources that you could contaminate? People have long been arguing about, and of course, the most recent deal with the dyes and the food colorings, and the fact that our food is banned, basically everywhere else on the planet. it's not a far stretch to say that, well, actually, the water's being poisoned, the food's being poisoned, the air's being poisoned. There's IGRs being introduced, there's adulticides being introduced. I mean, are we not currently under attack from a major, large scale pest control program? I mean, maybe, obviously not, but there's enough
Yeah,
case to be
like
made to write a fictional book about it. I mean,
yes, and I'm not going to talk about the fictional book that I know about. I spend a lot of time listening to podcasts about horrible people in history, but I will say, like, please, folks, like, do not take what we were saying as like, oh, we believe all of this stuff. Like, we know it's being said out there, and I want all of you to keep in mind, you are a consumer. So long as you have money to spend, they don't want you dead, unless you are somehow making them more money dead than alive. So,
or making them more money dying than being alive. Medical patients.
but yeah, I wasn't planning. Did you have any idea this was going to go this way? Because it was
Well, the
almost
moment the
cathartic.
moment we dropped Dale Gribble into the conversation, you knew it was going to get a little wild and squirrely for a minute. We could get this train back onto the train tracks here for a moment. If we want to go, you were talking about exterminating things like vampires. We could kind of key back into a major media figure for that. Let's talk about Van Helsing. Right? I mean, if you got into this industry because you wanted to kill vampires, then Van Helsing's got to be like one of your top dudes. Like,
Have to put some respect on his name. That is Dr. Van Helsing. Dare I say he could have been a BCE.
Probably was a BCE at this time.
Yeah.
Oh my
And
gosh.
there was like, if we think about just the way history was, there was a religious aspect to a lot of modern day life. I'm going to reference a metal band if any is ghost metal. That's a topic for a different day. But the band Ghost, some consider them a metal band. They have a song called Rats, and obviously, if you've seen their imagery, they're very is satanic a word I could use? I don't know if that's the appropriate term. But obviously religion plays a theme in their music. So like they have a song called Rats and it's about the plague, and the church did get involved in the Catholic Church did get involved in the Black Death and the bubonic plague. It didn't work because it hit Italy before it hit everywhere else, but they tried. And there is, I guarantee you, there is somebody who's going to watch this who has told one of their customers that they are doing God's work. The like pest management is God's work if you are religious, but like keeping a balance and keeping people healthy and keeping people safe, like that was what Van Helsing was aspiring to do. Yes, he carried around crosses and cloves of garlic, but he also carried around, depending on which version you watch, a crossbow that was really cool as well.
Hey, you gotta have a lethal. You gotta have some kind of lethal action. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Um, we've also seen the big trope of space bugs. Space bugs seems to have taken a circle back around. There were Starship Troopers and such in the past, but recently Helldivers 2 has kind of re-brought that trope around. It kind of plays on the same overly patriotic, overly propagandized military there to go kill the space bugs, and I think there's something really cool and interesting about that, because how funny is it that the human mind, would think that even as we get out there, right, even as we get amongst the stars, we're still going to be pestered by bugs, right? We're still not going to get away from the damn locusts and the fucking praying mantis and everything else that's trying to attack you. It's like, of course, and then the space bugs are always 8 or 10 or 15 feet tall and capable of eating people, and I think it kind of is akin to the same reason why we are afraid of aliens, right? Is because we assume that aliens would act exactly the way that we act, right? So, like, if we were going to colonize an area, if we were to show up on a planet, like, we would not be the people that show up and we're like, hey, we're here to make peace and get to know your leader. Like, we're showing up blasting, we're like, get rid of all these fucking squiggly things until there's only humans left for us to, like, who cares about the deer here, like, this is a fucking talking squirrel, da-da-da, like.
Well, that was actually a big theme in, like, Ender's Game, where, like, let's be honest, like, if you look at the things on Earth, we are special, and not always in the best ways. And when I say special, not in the best ways, I want you to look at your knees and tell me that couldn't be designed better. You ever hurt your knee real bad? Or you ever hurt yourself sleeping? Because our backs aren't perfect either. So, like, we are special on this planet, and it's because of what we have up here. But, like, there are so many bugs. Like, there are so many bugs just on this planet that, like, when you think about, well, what's out there, it's probably bugs. But, like, bugs behaving like us was a big theme in Ender's Game, because they were like, well, we're special because we have this higher thought. And they didn't even stop to think that this big blue ball in space had, sentient, intelligent life on it, because they were just like, we need water. So they were stealing water from all the planets, and then they're like, oh crap, there's, like, things that want to kill us back here. Like, we just kicked a hornet's nest. And then, the movie ends with, a little boy soldier wiping out an entire race because he's like, oh crap, they didn't attack us on purpose. Whoopsie, they're bugs.
Whoopsie. Yeah, exactly. They're bugs, That's kind of that's kind of the reckless, careless side of pest control. I'll just wipe out all the bugs. That's the reason why we've changed our vernacular from being exterminators to pest control people. We're not actually out there just killing all the life forms and eradicating the entire. Yeah, right. We manage what's coming inside. But
ask that bug if he knows I'm manning.
If he knows I'm manning. When you think about, there's new islands that show up in the ocean, and when scientists land on these islands, right, they're fresh, they're coming out of the water, volcanic activity, right, and they'll go and they'll visit them days or even weeks later, and there's life already there, right? There's flora, there's bugs, and you think to yourself, how in the world are there bugs in the middle of the ocean that just pop up there? And this is a brand new island. There was no land here, thousands of miles away. But, one of the cool things that I've learned, being in pest control, is just how filled our atmosphere is with life and activity, and how many bugs get way up into the jet streams, and then they're carried, literally to the tune of thousands of miles away, and can deposit themselves on even the smallest, most remote island, right? And the same thing happens with the plant life as well, seeds and other stuff, in the oceans are washing up things, and and so when you think about space bugs, right, like bugs in space, but the truth is, like, it would be the bugs that would get out there first, right? It would be the bugs that would travel somehow there first and get there first. It would be the first stuff that we see, and so. Even though it's kind of another trope, these holding a rifle carried in, full in gear and shooting space bugs. Like you said, I don't know, man. It does feel like if we were going to discover any type of life form out in space first, the first one we're going to find is a bug. Like, maybe we'll find something else. Maybe we'll be shocked, but I think they kind of found, like, worms or whatever it was frozen in, water in Mars or something like that. There was some kind of small life forms. And, it does feel like if we find anything step up above that, it's going to be bugs, still a kind of a more simple form of life, but more complex than, protozoas or whatever.
I also do want to take, like, the media interpretation of aliens, like, being bugs most of the time is, like, maybe a little bit of guilt that some people feel, or fear turned into guilt, because let's find the person who was using a magnifying glass on that anthill as a kid. Do you feel a little bad? Or are you just happy that they can't get you back? Because, like, me as a pest management professional, I don't like it when the pests try to kill me back. Like there's a reason I'm terrified of bald-faced hornets, even though I'm not allergic.
Right, right.
They try to kill you back. And if they were my own size, I'd want them on another planet.
Yeah. Well, and people are already terrified of them. They're only this big, you know. Can you imagine one
Yeah.
6 foot tall flying at you? Oh my gosh. You know, and like you said, it's the best way to you know, disconnect, you know, any kind of humanity, right? Like you said, bugs are kind of already seen as the lowest form of life. They're easily to overlook them, easy to kind of overpass their significance or their value. A lot of people just don't hold it. We hold a lot of value for bugs. We love bugs, but not, you know, not a lot of people do. And so, like you said, that kind of caricature of slapping that bug look on them. Like you said, I think that in media that helps to give the fear, that helps to give the kind of primal, you know, scariness of it. Because if the person, if the person got off the spaceship and they literally looked like a human being, but maybe with like blue skin or something, you know, like Avatar, you're not gonna be afraid of him. You have to be worried about trying to fuck them, right? Like that's what's gonna happen. You're gonna end up fucking the Na'vi. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah.
This is going to sound outlandish and a little weird, but bear with me. I also think that the fear of bugs might be not primarily a Western thing, but like a really big deal in Western like civilization, like
Yeah.
United Kingdom and the USA, because we're afraid of communism. And I'm going to talk about
That's
like,
a hilarious connection. I think I
and,
know
like
where
if
you're
you think
going
about
with
it
it, but
though,
that's
ants are
fucking hilarious.
communists.
Right, right. Yeah, total socialist. Yeah, totally socialist communist. It's all for the
But
queen. It's
like
all for
if
the
we
greater
go
good.
to Star Wars,
Nobody has
go
a
to
mind.
Star Wars, the Clone Wars, the Geonosians, they were able to produce the Death Star so fast because they were communist bugs.
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely. Nobody can dispute with how productive fire ants are. Fire ants are. We're getting our ass kicked by fire ants. As an industry, we should be fucking embarrassed.
Yes.
Okay, like we call ourselves pest control. We cannot control fire ants for anything. We can control them in your yard, maybe if you pay a pretty decent amount for it. But as far as like this is a pest species that has been imported and we did not want here as non-native, and we're deploying, and what is it, the most amount of chemical applications is for fire ants, the most number of dollars generated in our industry, the most number of service calls, it's all for fire ants, and we ain't put a dent in them. I mean, they just keep going more and more north every single year. They're taking over the whole continent. You know, it's like we're doing a bad job.
I think somebody with money needs to get lit up by fire ants, and by money I mean like an NFL player or like a famous celebrity, because then maybe we would solve the problem. Because like, when I go out and mow my lawn every week and I get lit up by fire ants, it's not that big a deal to me. Like I get itchy and it sucks, but like, and whatever, I'll deal with it. But if a Kardashian got lit up by fire ants, I think then we'd get an initiative to do it.
What was the movie? God, the name of it is escaping me. There was a movie about a kid who gets stung by a bunch of bees, and he has like an allergic
Oh
reaction and
no, that
dies.
Macaulay Culkin movie I don't remember the name of, that makes everybody cry.
Yes, that movie did like a
He hits me
generation's
without
worth
his
of damage.
glasses.
Yes, and the glasses, exactly. It's like, how many people, are absolutely terrified of bees, and it's like every person that come across nowadays is like, I'm allergic to bees. I'm allergic to bees. And maybe you just have an LLR, large localized reaction. It's not, you're not going to go into anaphylactic shock and die but it seems like after that movie came out, it seeped into the public conscious that it's like you can die from these, so therefore everybody dies from these, and it's my girl. Yes, that is so funny, dude. Oh my gosh, yes. We'll just have to leave that one at that. It is what it is. We're thankful we get to take care of bees, but and then that, what, actually, to kind of harp on it a little bit longer. There's a massive fear that's been stoked, but then also there's this huge eco movement that's at massive odds with it. It's like save all the bees. You can't ever touch or hurt the bees, but also get these bees away from me. They're like an imminent public health problem, right? So it's like, well, which one is it? Is every bee gonna is a complete total harm, or are we out to save all bees? Like it can't be both, right? Which again, it's never both. That's the conspiracy, right? That's where the pest control. It's like, yeah, it's actually somewhere in the middle, right? It's like, but
The thing about the bees is honeybees themselves, like I know, they're pretty harmless. But like it's always save the bees until it's like, well, there is a bunch of them living underneath my porch. And like I will walk up this close to a honeybee's nest and be like, I can't do anything about that. That's against the law. But me standing this close should reassure you that they're not going to kill you.
right.
Like, well, what do I? And the people get upset because like they want to throw money at you, and it's like, no, trust me, I like making money. Don't get me wrong, but I can't do this. Like, there are actually people who will do this for free. You just have to call them and wait till like the weekend.
Right.
There's always going to be a guy like, oh, hell yeah, I'd love to fill up another apiary. Like, let me just come suck those up. But no, it's this weird terror people have, despite, me, the professional, standing, again, this close to the nest, they're fine.
So how do you think pest control is demonized in the media space? Is there what was it, Wilbur the rat guy, right? The plumber's crack and the nasty, what was that movie? That's another movie I'm thinking of. This I'm gonna just look it up real quick.
I will start with the demonization for me, or at least where I realized like the industry I was about to get into was seen as horrible by some people. When I went to college, I had to take an anthropology of food class. And they forced me to attend this lecture by this guy who I don't remember the name of, talking about like how awful pesticides are. And like I was already like I had a job offer. Like I was going to be doing it during my summers. And this guy was just talking about how all of this was like derivative of Zyklon B and it came from World War One and World War Two. And I was just like, that's not what it is at all. And then like fast forward like 6 months into my career, I'm in this place called Worcester, Massachusetts, which is around where Adam Sandler's from. And this lady was under the impression she ran my company out of town because we were giving everybody cancer. And I was young and I was like a people pleaser, so like I brought an MSDS to give her because I treated her neighbor. And like I gave her the MSDS and she crumpled it up and shoved it down my shirt. As I'm on the phone with my manager, just like, what do I do?
Full blown assaulted. Like, I don't care about your data. Fuck your science.
That's exactly what it was, because like they're just some people like completely convinced that what we do gives people cancer, and it's like, no, it'll mess you up in other ways, but like we try to stay away from the carcinogens and the things that make your babies born with extra limbs. CDDT.
Right. And even if we were using products that were a little bit, it's like just don't go around licking the baseboards. You'll be okay. It's like...
Yeah, but that was like I always told customers, because I know you're not supposed to do this, but there were some customers where I was like, you can stay here if you don't do anything stupid or crazy. How's that sound? Right. And they're like, cool. And I'm like, by the way, I knew you were going to be cool with that because I let you stay here. Like, if I thought you were going to do something stupid or crazy, you'd be gone now. Like, just stay over there.
So I pulled up the movie. It's Willard. Do you remember this movie, Willard?
Oh, geez, I'm gonna pull it up myself now.
It's a 2003 horror movie. It's about this guy who like lives in this apartment. It's like absolutely infested with rats, and I tend to think it's we're falling either somewhere in between there and you know, this stereotype of like half plumber, half, you know, pest control guy, that's always running around nasty and, unkempt and, belly hanging out and all that stuff and just being like, oh man, I'm here to kill your fucking rats, and it's like, yeah, that just feels like that's definitely the trope. It's just it's either you're some weird psychopath who's oddly way too comfortable around rats and is the rat king or whatever. You speak to the rats, or it's something akin to the idea that you're just like this nasty big fat fuck that just wants to like just crawl around rats or something. I don't know, man. I've always thought that those were the kind of the funniest main tropes that you see, like as far as like in art or like comics or stuff like that.
I have used that trope to my advantage before, but in my defense, it was with people that I saw as you are way more mentally screwed up than I am, and I'm talking specifically like correctional officers, like prison guards. Like there was one guy I used to have to do I had to do pest control for the Brad Brand Bradston Street Jail in Boston, which is where the Craigslist killer was held. And horrible things happened to me there. Like for whatever reason, every time I went there, I blew out the crotch on my pants. It was a weird phenomenon. I had to put it back together, the goo boards. But like there was the guard that they had me with was terrified of mice, and I would reach under the cafeteria table and be like, I got one, and I'd like show it to him as it was like still squirming, and he like passed out, and I was like, I don't care. Like you're kind of a bad person.
So let's do a couple of fun
yeah.
little prompts real quick. What would Geralt take on? What pest would Geralt take on if he entered your house?
Entered my house?
Yep.
I mean, probably a giant American roach, and my fiance would be so grateful.
Unfortunately,
I mean, especially if it was like the Henry Cavill version. Like, not only is the roach problem gone, but Henry Cavill's in my house. Like, why wouldn't she be happy?
Hold on. I said slaying a pest, okay? Hold on. I said slaying a pest. I was kidding. Oh, my gosh. Who is the best movie technician? Have you ever seen a technician like in a movie that was actually pretty accurate?
I actually haven't. Like, have you seen any? Like, I because previously we discussed like people tend to use the exterminator like as a ruse. Like, yeah, I'm here to do the pest control, but it's only like it's a disguise. Have you seen any good technicians in movies?
I mean, I guess there maybe are a few examples where they're trying to do like a justice in the sense that like they're not making them out to be crazy characters. But even those ones I always hate because it's like, you wouldn't use a respirator in that situation. You would never use that you wouldn't use dust for that. It's like.
I hate looking up pest control on like TikTok or anything though, because 9 times out of 10 it's somebody who sells pest control, and it's them like videotaping themselves like this as they're trying to sell something, and they just have like, no, you don't understand. We are not pest exterminators. We are pest destroyers. And it's like, I had one of those dorks on a Segway on my porch the other day. I'm still upset about it, but that's a different topic. I'm gonna go back to TV and talk about Vasily Fett from The Strain. Like the things he talked about, like before I was in pest management, like I could just knowledge drop things I read about in the comic books, and people are like, "Oh wow, like you really know your stuff already." And I'm like, "Well, I know that rat turds are high in nitrogen, and I know that you can use a black light to find them, and I know they leave rub marks." Learned it from a comic book.
Let's see here. You know what? I'm looking at a couple of these little questions. We covered the quirky conspiracy guy, the blue collar exterminator. Oh, you know what? Here's an example that I didn't think of. Batman. Is Batman a pest control guy? Is Batman an exterminator? Exterminating crime? No, maybe too far of a reach.
The Batman did not stop the Riddler from having
It did not stop.
bats eat that guy's face. Like I don't like when the Batman with Robert Pattinson came out and the Riddler had the rat cages on two sides of that guy's face. I was like, that sounds horrible. I don't want to watch this anymore.
There was also an old horror movie where they took like rats on someone's stomach, and then like the bowl got heated up, and they had to go down. What movie was that? Was that like a Saw movie? I think
That sounds like a Saw movie.
that was very interesting as well. So villains out there, I think villains more than the heroes are using the
There's
pest control stuff.
one of the latest Suicide Squad had the daughter of an
Sorry about that. I guess the whole chat room just collapsed.
no.
Oh, and of course, now we're going to get a new batch of audience members right as we're wrapping this thing up. Well, I hate to inform you guys, but we're actually at about an hour and 10 minutes on this pod, so we're probably going to be wrapping it up here in just a minute. I did want to ask AJ if he had any recommendations for who should be the next person we bring on to interview, and also if there's any topics that you would like to see us cover in the future. I definitely know I'd like to have you back on. I'm one of my co-hosts here, if you will, to kind of go back and forth with. But who do you think would be a great person to try and pull onto the pod next?
You've probably had both Chaz, who is in the audience, and Mr. Botello, who was in the audience, who the reason I refer to him as Mr. Botello is because I'm horrible at anything Spanish and I don't want to mispronounce his name. So he will be Mr. Botello, unless I am reading it. I'm almost positive you've had them on there, but anytime I see them on LinkedIn or they post in here, my attention is had.
Your attention's at. Well, we definitely want to pull Chaz on. He's the best. He's definitely one of the first people to be a big fan of LTK and put me on the map, if you will. So major shout out to Chaz. Jorge, actually on the other side, is not only have I done some stuff with him recently, but I kind of want to go ahead and give him a quick little plug. He sells a very comprehensive pest control training program for German roaches. This is a $400+ style course. It's an hour and a half. He just rolled it out with Adam Holt, BCE, with his Name That Bug Consulting. We're going to try and put together an LTK edition of that, or an LTK recording of it, where we can pull in and have our members contribute a small fee, because again, $400 quite costly for anyone to come out of pocket individually. But if we pull together, I think we can have that presentation presented here exclusively for LTK. So just wanted to name drop that. If anybody was interested in pitching in $20-$40, we want to try and get about 10 to 20 people who can hang out here in the Discord. And he's going to be going over some incredible information and some great science. They recently just got back from Mexico doing I think a week or 2 weeks worth of training and labs with the guys down there. So he travels all over the world. He's incredibly good at what he does. I got a taste of it the other night. I got a little sample of it. It was incredibly informative. I've been in this industry for 10 years. I've killed millions of roaches and tons of infestations, and I can tell you, I walked away with more that night than every CEU I have had in the last 10 years. So if you're doubting whether or not he's a true specialist, attend the class, spend the $20. It's so worth it. You will walk away immensely more knowledgeable afterwards. Also, I did want to kind of give a shout out to the sponsors, right? SteriFab, Nisus, Pest Patrol, right? These are guys who have put their money where their mouth is. They're willing to back us. They're willing to help us out with the events that we have coming up on the calendar. This weekend, we have the Halo 3 event occurring. So get your Xboxes fired up. Get the Game Pass going. Download Halo 3. We're going to be handing out cash rewards and special merchandise, LTK merchandise, Halo merchandise. And it's all going to be put together by these sponsors. So an extra, special shout out to them. We love them, and we thank them for everything that they do. So if you see any of their products out there, if you see Chaz, if you see one of the nicest reps, give them a high five. Thank them for LTK. Thank them for their contributions to it, because without them, there's no way we'd be able to do what we're doing lately in the last couple of months. So, major love to our sponsors. And also, just a quick plug for the Discord. If you're hearing this and you're not in the Discord and you want to know more about pest control, you want to get plugged in with the network, you want to meet people, you want to have these kind of fun and silly conversations with more like-minded folks, make sure you're joining in the Discord. Check out the link. Make sure that you're getting in. Don't be shy. Don't be a fly on the wall, right? Everybody here is a pest control guy just like you. So if you're in the industry and you're passionate about it, there's no other place you'll find more people who can nerd out with you than this spot right here. So get involved. AJ here, he's a major trainer for Rent-A-Kill Terminex, and he touches a lot of people's lives. He touches a lot of people's education, and he's here. You can ask him any question you have anytime. He's a quick tag away, along with many of our other entomologists, and of course just seasoned and veteran technicians as well. So this is definitely the place to be. We want you here. Thank you so much for tuning in this evening to the podcast, and we will see you guys around.
Thanks for tuning into the License to Kill podcast. We hope you found today's episode helpful, informative, and engaging. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe to your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. It really helps us to reach more listeners like you. Have a question or a topic that you'd like us to cover in a future episode? Connect with us through our Facebook, YouTube, and most importantly, our Discord. Until next time, this is your host, Marcus, reminding you to stay sharp, stay legendary, stay connected.